The 6 realms after death, the truth about the theory of rebirth. Welcome back, everyone, to Mind Podcast. The theory of rebirth encompasses the entire universe, including humans and all beings within it. Essentially, anything that exists in this world falls within the cycle of samsara. For instance, the giant Earth spinning on its axis in space, with one side facing the sun being bright and the other side being dark, causes the alternation of day and night, a phenomenon that has occurred continuously for millions of years. This incessant rotation from day to night and night to day exemplifies the cyclical nature of light and darkness, or day and night, which is an aspect of samsara. Similarly, the varying distances between the Earth and the sun create different levels of heat, leading humans to divide their living environment into 4 seasons: spring, summer, autumn, and winter. The perpetual change and rotation of these 4 seasons represent the samsara of the seasons. Each time we witness a loved one passing away, we experience deep sorrow because we will never see that person again in this life. The bonds formed over many years through close living, mutual care, and shared successes and failures are severed. Now that loved one is definitively gone, meaning they have died. Their rigid body remains, but where has their soul, their life force gone? This question rarely crosses our minds until we face the loss, at which point it fills us with many doubts and anxieties. To address this, we must explore where humans come from and whether life truly ends with death or if there is something beyond. Regarding the Buddhist theory of rebirth, what is it? Literally, rebirth, samsara in Sanskrit, refers to the continuous cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. This perpetual cycle is often symbolized by the wheel of samsara. We can imagine the wheel of samsara as a circle where human life continuously rotates, with no discernible beginning or end. This unending cycle traps humans in a sea of suffering from one life to the next until they achieve ultimate enlightenment and liberation. Around the world, most religions address the concept of rebirth, but each has its own interpretation. In Buddhism, when the Buddha attained the threefold knowledge Trividya, the knowledge of past lives, Pabba-niva-sanusatinyanar, the knowledge of the divine eye, Dibakaku, and the knowledge of the extinction of defilements, Asavakayanyana, these insights answered his questions about human origins in the afterlife. The knowledge also explained why humans endure the cycle of birth and death. Through this realization, the Buddha recognized that rebirth is a fundamental truth imposed on all beings, leaving no one exempt. This realization was not a result of the Buddha's imagination, but from his enlightenment, revealing its existence since time immemorial, even before the Buddha's birth. The knowledge of past lives, Pabba-niva-sanusatinyanar, is the clear wisdom that comprehends countless past lives of the present self. This realization affirmed the existence of rebirth. According to the Jataka tales, the Buddha clearly saw and remembered his innumerable past lives, knowing who he was, where he was born, and what he did. The origin of humans is explained through the knowledge of the divine eye, Dibakaku, which sees the karma, actions, that lead to rebirth in accordance with the law of cause and effect. Where there is a cause, there will be an effect. If this exists, that exists. If this arises, that arises. If this ceases, that ceases. The divine eye, Dibakaku, is the insightful eye that clearly sees the detailed past and future of all beings, observing beings dying in one place and being reborn in another within the 6 realms of existence. He saw the scene of people being reborn clearly, like someone standing on a high tower looking down at a crossroads, seeing people coming and going below. Thus, when a person dies, it is not the end. Rather, they are guided by their karma to be reborn in the 6 realms of samsara. On the final night of the 4th week, at the 3rd watch under the Bodhi tree, the Buddha attained the knowledge of the extinction of the defilements, Asavakayana. Defilements are the impurities such as greed, hatred, and delusion, also known as karma, which are the good or bad seeds accumulated in the minds of beings over many lifetimes. Extinction means the end, signifying that the Buddha clearly understood the reasons causing beings to endure the cycle of birth and death. To attain liberation from samsara, one must practice and completely eliminate the defilements. In summary, due to the complete tranquility of his mind and the enlightenment of his spiritual wisdom, the Buddha remembered all events across countless past lifetimes. What the Buddha realized is challenging for ordinary minds to comprehend, but we cannot help but place our faith in his teachings. Over 2,600 years ago, the Buddha proclaimed things that ordinary eyes could not see. Today, science has proven through the microscope that in a drop of water, there are 84,000 microorganisms. Regarding the universe, he said that beyond the vast space, there are countless worlds that cannot be fully counted. Later, while spreading his teachings, the Buddha explained the theory of rebirth to beings. He taught that humans are subject to the cycle of birth and death from one life to the next because of their actions, not due to the interference of any deities or gods. Good or bad actions, words, thoughts, and accumulated habits from many lives carry over to this life and continue to accumulate further, collectively called karma. This karma is the cause, and where there is a cause, there will be an effect. Therefore, after death, people must be reborn to experience the results of the good or bad causes they created in their previous lives. Discussing the samsara of all things, let's look around us. All the trees, mountains, rivers, and oceans do not escape the cycle of samsara. For example, a mango seed, an orange seed, a grapefruit seed, a tangerine seed, or a pine seed, when it falls to the ground under suitable conditions, will sprout into a seedling, grow into a tree, and bear fruit. If the fruit is not harvested, it falls to the ground, the seed separates, and when the conditions are right, it will grow into a new tree. This is the samsara of plants. Water in rivers and oceans also follows this cycle. Water evaporates due to the sun's heat, condenses into clouds when cooled, falls as rain, and the cycle continues. This is the samsara of water. Regarding the nature of humans, we see even more clearly the cycle of samsara. The Buddha taught that humans consist of two parts, name nama and form rupa. Form refers to the physical body and name refers to the mind or consciousness. Both the body and mind undergo their own cycles of samsara. For example, the human body is composed of 4 elements: earth, water, wind, and fire. The solid parts correspond to earth, e.g. skin, flesh, muscles, tendons, bones, hair, nails, teeth. Blood, pus, sweat, tears, and mucus are considered water. The respiratory system functions through inhaling and exhaling air, representing wind. The body's warmth corresponds to fire. When these 4 elements are not in harmony, a person becomes ill, and lacking one element, a person cannot survive. When a person dies, these 4 elements dissolve and return to the universe, so the physical body also undergoes samsara. Regarding the mind or consciousness, it constantly changes, sometimes happy, sometimes sad, sometimes loving, sometimes hating, sometimes gentle, sometimes fierce. When the mind is happy, that is birth. When happiness ends, that is cessation. Thoughts arise, which is birth. When thoughts cease, that is cessation. This cycle of birth and cessation is known in Buddhism as the cycle of the mind. In other words, it can be seen as the samsara of the mind. All phenomena in this world form and dissolve due to conditions, causing all things to change in form or state. For example, water evaporates due to heat and condenses into ice due to cold. This transformation is determined by conditions. For humans, the Buddha asserted that they undergo samsara because of defilements. As long as defilements exist, birth and death continue. When defilements end, the cycle of birth and death ceases. Defilements or karma are the causes leading to samsara. In Buddhist terms, defilements are the impurities and negative habits, wrong thoughts that lead to harmful actions towards oneself and others. These factors accumulate in the minds of people over many lifetimes, and in this life, they continue to create more karma through their actions, speech, and thoughts. Whatever humans create, whether good or evil, eventually turns into karma. Thus, there are 2 types of karma, good and bad. Good karma includes thoughts, words, and actions that bring peace and happiness to oneself and others. Keeping the body pure means not killing, harming others or animals, not stealing, and not engaging in sexual misconduct. Keeping speech pure involves not lying, not speaking harshly, not engaging in slander, and not gossiping. Keeping the mind pure means not harboring evil thoughts, not being greedy, angry, or deluded. Bad karma involves actions, words, and thoughts that are contrary to good karma, causing oneself anxiety and suffering and bringing misery to others. Karma itself is an abstract concept without a physical form, but it has the power to lead us through the paths of samsara. The more karma one creates and accumulates, the stronger its force becomes. This is referred to as karmic force. Karma, whether good or bad, does not arise naturally but is created by humans. Eventually, humans cannot resist the pull of karma, which leads them to experience the results of their actions in this life or the next, or at any given time. When the conditions are right, the results will manifest. What are the 6 realms of samsara? The depiction of the 6 realms of samsara describes conditional existences where beings are reborn after death. Samsara is the continuous cycle of birth and rebirth in 6 realms, where beings are born in one realm and reborn in another. This cycle of birth and death is unending. Only by practicing and eliminating defilements and attaining the fruit of arhatship can one escape the cycle of birth and death in samsara. The 6 realms are often illustrated by the wheel of life, including the realms of gods, demigods, asuras, humans, animals, hungry ghosts, and hell. Let us explore each realm. First is the realm of gods. In Buddhist tradition, the realm of gods is inhabited by celestial beings who possess miraculous powers and majestic appearances, more refined and beautiful than humans. The realm of gods is a place of purity, joy, and freedom from worry, anger, suffering, or despair. These celestial beings were once virtuous humans who performed many good deeds, accumulated much merit, and practiced true mindfulness. After their physical death, they are reborn in this realm and live a blissful life, free from worries about the future, as they possess the power to transform anything they wish. However, these celestial beings sometimes forget about their spiritual practice and the development of compassion and wisdom from their past lives. The scriptures state that the realm of gods is vast and divided into many levels, each corresponding to different degrees of good karma. For example, Queen Mahamaya, after giving birth to Prince Siddhartha, was reborn in the Tavatimsa heaven due to the great merit of giving birth to a future Buddha. Another example is Maitreya Bodhisattva, who is currently residing in the Tusita heaven, waiting for the right conditions to descend to this world to teach. According to the scriptures, before descending to the human world, Shakyamuni Buddha was a bodhisattva in the Tusita heaven. Celestial beings do not live forever in the realm of gods. Once they exhaust their merit, they must undergo rebirth, meaning they will die. Depending on their karma, they may be reborn as humans, ascend to a higher realm of gods, or descend to lower realms. Second is the realm of asuras. Asuras have powerful abilities but are not as majestic as celestial beings. Asuras are strong beings who, in their previous lives, had many talents but were greedy for fame and wealth, arrogant and boastful. Sometimes they are practitioners with high ranks, but still harbor greed, anger, and delusion. They enjoy being praised for their merits, accompanied by attendants wherever they go. They may have contributed significantly to the Dharma by building temples and monasteries, but still have lingering desires and anger. They are pleased when praised and angry when criticized. Their merit is less than that of celestial beings, so when they die, they are reborn in the realm of asuras. If they perform good deeds and are less angry, they may be reborn as humans. If they practice to eliminate their violent nature and do not cause harm, compete, or harbor anger, they can be reborn in the realm of gods. If they remain angry, stingy, and selfish, they will be reborn as hungry ghosts after their asura life ends. Third is the human realm, known as the Saha world or the world of humans. It is for those who have created good karma before death or a mix of good and bad karma. Depending on their karma, they may be born beautiful or ugly, rich or poor, happy or suffering. The human realm is divided into many countries and various ethnicities. Therefore, when people are reborn, they may be born into a civilized country and enjoy blessings, or into a barbaric country and live in poverty and hardship. Scriptures often advise that being born as a human in this life is truly fortunate, and one should strive to create good karma, maintain the 5 precepts so that upon death, one may be reborn as a human again, living a happy and joyful life, or practice the 10 good deeds in meditation to be reborn in the heavenly realm to enjoy blessings. Fourth, the realm of animals. This is the world of animals, including creatures living in water, underground, on land, creatures with 2 legs, 4 legs, many legs, long bodies, no legs, those with fur, horns, wings flying in the sky, or tiny microorganisms invisible to the naked eye. Animals live by instinct without rationality. Those who, while alive, pursued materialism, physical desires, engaged in selling drugs and indulged in addictions, dulling their minds, and those who committed cruel acts, killing people and animals, are reborn into the animal realm upon death. In this realm, death often ends tragically as one species preys on another savagely. Depending on the karma created before, animals may either exhaust their previous karma and be reborn into another form, or remain in this realm. Fifth, the realm of hungry ghosts. This realm is for spirits who in their past lives were excessively greedy, deceitful, corrupt, embezzling public funds, committing murder and robbery, taking charity funds for themselves, and showing no compassion for the hungry and thirsty, even beating and driving them away. Hungry ghosts are described as having large bellies but small mouths and throats, making it impossible for them to swallow food or drink. Thus they remain eternally hungry and thirsty. Sixth, the realm of hell. This is the place of extreme punishment and suffering, reserved for those who committed great evil and had no conscience, who did not believe in cause and effect, and who ruthlessly murdered, causing immense suffering to many, including innocent animals. Upon death, they are condemned to hell to experience the suffering they inflicted on others. The Kshitigarbha Sutra describes hell as divided into many levels, each corresponding to the severity and nature of one's deeds. Beings in hell, after being punished for their sins, may be reborn into higher realms such as the animal realm or the human realm to continue repaying their karma. The 6 realms of rebirth exist in our current lives. The Buddhist theory of rebirth describes an endless cycle of life and death driven by karma, which humans themselves create. After death, karma guides one to be reborn into a realm corresponding to their actions, continuing this cycle perpetually unless one practices to attain enlightenment and liberation. From an enlightened perspective, the 6 realms of rebirth manifest in the human body and mind while still living, not just after death. These 6 realms correspond to 6 states of mind. Those who live quietly, peacefully, always forgiving and loving all beings, live joyfully without worldly attachments. They are like celestial beings living in the heavenly realm. Some people, though living in the world, practice the 10 good deeds. They live ethically, do not harm themselves or others, refrain from evil deeds, and engage in good deeds, free from greed and desire. Their minds are peaceful and joyful, living like they are in the heavenly realm. Buddhists who follow the precepts, or those who have not yet taken refuge in the Triple Gem, but live kindly and ethically, not killing, stealing, or indulging in sexual misconduct, speaking kindly without causing harm, and avoiding gambling and drinking, are reborn as humans due to their virtues. The human realm has both suffering and joy. To escape suffering, one should choose a life of practice, eliminating desires and attachments to attain a light and free mind. Asuras are those who are often angry, not tolerant, always yelling and fighting with others. They always believe they are right, and even when they do good deeds, they easily become angry, displaying actions and words that hurt those they help. They expect others to be grateful and follow their wishes. Asuras live in a state of anger, love to argue, and fight with others. People who are unfortunate, poor, and suffer from hunger, cold in winter, heat in summer, and wetness in the rainy season, live in a state of craving and are like hungry ghosts. Those categorized as animals may have human bodies, but their nature is like animals, living by instinct, satisfying desires without rationality or ethics. Those who live in hell are those who suffer continuous pain and torment, similar to beings in hell. For example, those with chronic illness live in constant pain, and their lives are like beings being tortured in hell. Understanding the meaning of rebirth through the 6 realms, heaven, human, asura, hungry ghost, animal, and hell, in Buddhism is not to become discouraged, but to improve one's life from sorrow, anger, and unethical behavior to a happier, more beneficial life for oneself and society. In the 6 realms of rebirth, with our ordinary vision, we can only see the human and animal realms. The other 4 realms are described in scriptures, but are not visible to us. We are currently in the human realm. How can we explain the differences among people? Some with yellow, white, black, or red skin, black, blonde, or red hair, some beautiful and rich, some disabled and suffering. The Buddha, in his enlightenment, explained that humans are born according to karma. If in this life one does evil deeds causing suffering to others, their next rebirth will correspond to a life of suffering and poverty. Conversely, if one lives well and does good deeds, their next life will be better. What are the 14 questions Buddha did not answer? In Buddhist scriptures, there are many instances where the Buddha remained silent when confronted with certain metaphysical or impractical questions posed by non-Buddhist ascetics. The Buddha clearly saw that those who asked such questions either did not understand them themselves or were merely trying to show off their knowledge through speculation or conjecture. Moreover, even if he were to answer, the limitations of language would prevent any explanation from fully conveying the Buddha's insight. Therefore, the Buddha chose to remain silent. The sutras recount that one day, a non-Buddhist ascetic named Vacchagotta approached the Buddha and asked, "Venerable Gautama, is there a self?" The Buddha remained silent, not answering. Then, "Venerable Gautama, is there not a self?" The Buddha still kept silent. During the Buddha's time, ascetics like Vacchagotta were not uncommon, and they often engaged in metaphysical debates with each other. Remaining silent before certain questions, there are several questions that were posed to the Buddha, but he did not answer them because they were based on false premises and were useless. Clinging to such questions through mere logical arguments leads to the trap of conventional, formulaic, and dualistic understanding. This trap results in endless debates and further questions, diverting attention from spiritual practice. Many teachers who lived concurrently with the Buddha in the 6th century BCE had proposed numerous theories in the realm of metaphysical philosophy. However, the Buddha protected his disciples from these traps, not through prohibition, argument, or explanation, but through silence. The 14 questions that the Buddha did not answer include: 1. Is the universe eternal? 2. Is the universe not eternal? 3. Is the universe both eternal and not eternal? 4. Is the universe neither eternal nor not eternal? 5. Is the universe finite? 6. Is the universe infinite? 7. Is the universe both finite and infinite? 8. Is the universe neither finite nor infinite? 9. Is the soul identical with the body? 10. Is the soul different from the body? 11. Does a liberated being exist after death? 12. Does a liberated being not exist after death? Does a liberated being both exist and not exist after death? 14. Does a liberated being neither exist nor not exist after death? In the Kula Malunkyaputta Sutta, the Buddha's refusal to answer certain metaphysical questions is recorded. This scripture presents the unanswered questions posed by a disciple named Malunkyaputta. The Buddha did not directly respond to these questions but redirected Malunkyapputta's concerns towards more practical matters, the present suffering and the mental disturbances he was experiencing. The Buddha stated, "Malunkyaputta, whether there is a view that the universe is infinite or a view that the universe is not infinite, first you must understand that there is birth, aging, death, suffering, lamentation, pain, sorrow, and despair. For me, I only teach about the cessation of these things in this world, in this life. Therefore, Malunkyaputta, hold in your mind what I have taught, exactly as I have taught it, and what I have not taught, exactly as I have not taught it." The scriptures recount the story as follows. A man who was shot with a poisoned arrow, instead of removing the arrow and treating the wound, kept questioning who shot the arrow, what the bowstring was made of, and how the poison was concocted. If he continued to ask such questions, he would die before finding answers. The Buddha is not a dogmatic teacher imposing doctrines, nor a philosopher or scientist providing explanations about the universe or metaphysical arguments. The Buddha is a spiritual teacher guiding us to see the nature of our own existence and a healer leading us out of suffering to find true and lasting happiness. The following is another excerpt from the Kula Malunkyaputta Sutta, emphasizing the futility of metaphysical and purely logical arguments. Understanding these things does not help in progressing on the path of practice, as they are of no benefit to peace and enlightenment. What is beneficial to peace and enlightenment that the Buddha teaches his disciples are the truths of suffering, the origin of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the path leading to the cessation of suffering. Instead of engaging in endless debates about dualistic and conventional concepts, the Buddha brought Malunkyaputta back to reality to look directly at the true nature of existence. The Buddha has given his disciple Malankyaputra, and all of us today, a truly miraculous medicine, without mentioning the dimensions of the universe. When the medicine of the Dharma has permeated our consciousness, dissolving the toxins of ignorance, the true nature of the universe will reveal itself to us clearly, without the need to ask the Buddha whether the universe is eternal or not. Silence is an open door, an infinite space. Pure logical questioning is a closing act, a form of duality and entanglement. If we think deeply, we will see the subtlety in the Buddha's presentations and teachings in the scriptures. For example, the way the questions are presented in the Kula Malunkyaputta Sutta above, each concern is raised sequentially with 4 questions. Is the universe eternal? Is the universe not eternal? Is the universe both eternal and not eternal? Is the universe neither eternal nor not eternal? If only one question is asked, is the universe eternal? The question would be incomplete, and the partial nature would lead to endless debate. The second part of the question, is the universe not eternal, presents the dualistic nature of yes and no. The third and fourth parts of the question, is the universe both eternal and not eternal, and is the universe neither eternal nor not eternal, resolve the entire question, making the concern meaningless. In summary, a complete question has its answer inherent in it. The Buddha's silence is profoundly meaningful. Let's look at the issue from another perspective. When Malunkyaputta asked the Buddha whether the universe is eternal or not, he inadvertently fell into the following errors. Viewing the universe as a clear entity, while the universe is just a compound aggregation. Viewing the universe as existing solidly, while the universe is merely a product of impermanence. Viewing the universe as an entity outside of consciousness, while the universe is just a projection of consciousness. Such crude errors show that Malunkyapputta's question is a wrongly posed question. However, as stated above, the third and fourth parts of the question concerning whether the universe is both eternal and not eternal have indirectly resolved yes and no, existence and non-existence, the abuses of dualistic language. Malunkyapputta's questions might seem logical, but they are actually meaningless because they rely on conventional, formulaic, and contradictory expressions. Furthermore, this serves to illustrate to scientists and philosophers that those practicing Buddhism seek an absolute truth, one that is the ultimate reality beyond illusion, impermanence, and fluctuation. This absolute truth in Buddhism is known as the ultimate truth of reality. They do not pursue relative truths determined by observation, description, measurement, mathematical reasoning, or scientific hypotheses, nor do they rely on purely logical arguments of philosophers. In summary, the Buddha's silence is a method to cut off purely logical thought processes, breaking free from the conventional and formulaic nature of language, including the relative understanding of science and the purely logical understanding of philosophers. Buddhist understanding is a direct realization through experience, discovered through practice and spiritual transformation, a supernatural, clear, and absolute understanding. This understanding is called wisdom. The Buddha taught that such questions are entirely based on abstract reasoning and thus do not have answers. He stated that they are obscured by their lack of meaning or their convoluted, endless nature. Why didn't the Buddha answer the metaphysical questions above? Firstly, because these issues are unrelated to the Buddha's teachings. Early Buddhism, as taught by the Buddha, emphasized the practice of morality, concentration, and wisdom, and stressed the teachings on suffering, impermanence, and non-self. These teachings aim to help people understand suffering and the method to end suffering. The most urgent task is to eradicate suffering. Thus, the Buddha explained these teachings to be beneficial for practice, helping people to dispassion, abandon self-attachment, attain tranquility, and achieve liberation and enlightenment. The metaphysical questions, including the 4 questions related to the universe, whether it is finite or infinite, eternal or non-eternal, are not useful for liberating humanity from suffering. The Buddha taught, Vacha, thinking that the world is eternal, the world is not eternal, the world is infinite, the world is finite, life and body are one, life and body are different, the Tathagata exists after death, the Tathagata does not exist after death. Vacha, thinking that the Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist after death, is a wrong view, entangling, wilderness of views, sophistry of views, wrangling of views, a fetter of views, accompanied by suffering, affliction, distress, fever, and does not lead to dispassion, cessation, peace, higher knowledge, enlightenment, nirvana. Vacha, seeing this danger, I do not fully accept these views. The next two questions about the physical body and the mind, whether they are identical or not, are still subject to impermanence, decay, suffering, and the cycle of birth and death. According to the Buddha, all phenomena are non-self. The Buddha's teaching on non-self is truly extraordinary. Even if the non-Buddhists posed questions about whether the body and mind are identical or different, it does not fit with the Buddha's teaching on the five aggregates being non-self. These questions are endless and cannot reach their source. Next, the questions related to the Buddha's enlightenment. The Buddha attained enlightenment through practice. This realm of enlightenment cannot be fully understood by ordinary people, and no matter how the Buddha uses language or expressions, it would not help the listener fully understand. Therefore, the metaphysical questions above are unrelated to the Buddha's teachings and unrelated to the practice of morality and virtue. They are not useful for practicing the body and mind to reach the realm of enlightenment like the Buddha. Thus, when asked about such situations, the Buddha remained silent. Secondly, metaphysical questions lead us into a maze, causing us to lose direction. For the Buddha, debates that do not benefit practice and clarify right view are useless, let alone debates that bring about afflictions, dissatisfaction with the questions posed, and further confusion. During the Buddha's time, there was a monk named Malunkyaputta. One afternoon, while meditating, he suddenly got up and went to the Buddha's hermitage. After paying homage to the Buddha, he sat to one side and said, "Venerable Sir, while I was meditating alone, a thought arose. There are 10 unresolved questions that the Buddha has not explained to us. Whenever we ask about these questions, the Buddha remains silent. I feel unhappy when the Buddha does this. Venerable Sir, today, if you clearly explain these 10 questions, I will continue to live the life of renunciation. If you still remain silent, I will lose faith and will not continue to practice. If the Tathagata knows that the world is eternal, then please explain this to me. If the world is not eternal, then for what reason? If the Tathagata does not know about these matters, then directly say that you do not know." The Buddha said, "How foolish you are. Did you not understand these metaphysical questions when you first became a monk? When you followed me to practice the holy life, did I promise to explain these matters to you?" Malunkyaputta replied, "No, Venerable Sir." The Buddha continued, "If you had not been answered by the Tathagata, you would have died. Malunkyaputta, suppose there is a man wounded by a poisoned arrow, and his relatives wish to remove the arrow and bring him to a doctor, but he refuses to have the arrow removed unless he first knows who shot the arrow. Whether the shooter is from the warrior, Brahmin, merchant, or servant caste, whether he is tall, short, or of medium height, whether his skin is brown, white, black, or yellow, whether he is from a town, village, or hamlet. He does not want to remove the arrow until he knows what kind of bow shot it, what the bowstring is made of, the type of arrow, the material it is made from. Malunkyaputta, before he can know all this, he would die. Similarly, a person asking whether the universe is eternal or not, or other such metaphysical questions, would die before getting an answer from the Tathagata. Because life is short, if someone is troubled by these metaphysical questions all day and stubbornly seeks their source, they will increasingly fall into delusion and ultimately never find a way out. A significant educational message here is that unnecessary demands can harm one's mental state. The Buddha completely ignored metaphysical questions. Moreover, due to the limitations of language, ordinary people cannot understand or express metaphysical issues through language. Language, created by humans, is used to express our perceptions, experiences, and thoughts based on phenomena and things. Language is a tool to convey our understanding of things and ideas, but it cannot transcend the limitations of time and space. In other words, humans can only express things and ideas within the limits of time and space. Sometimes, our language is insufficient to describe daily life experiences. Everyone has likely experienced feelings or thoughts that they cannot find the words to express. Therefore, It is evident that human language is not an absolute means of expression. It is limited and cannot convey the understanding of an absolute truth. It can even distort the truth through perception. Because absolute truth, such as nirvana, transcends time, space, and the laws of conditioned phenomena, humans can only experience it through practice and realization, not through language or ordinary reasoning. Here, Zen language calls it the language of the way. In reality, such questions can never be fully answered through language or writing, and no language can convey such experiences. For example, in the Buddhist story of the turtle and the fish, the turtle describes the land world to the fish as hard, non-swimmable, and only walkable. But the fish, unable to understand, insists that the land must be like water, where one can swim, jump, and dive. Similarly, our ordinary language cannot describe the state of nirvana. Even using refined writing, flowery language, or lofty words is useless. They cannot capture the experience of nirvana. Those who cling to words are bound by them. The Lankavatara Sutra teaches that the ignorant, clinging to words, are like an elephant stuck in the mud, unable to escape. Finally, the Buddha adapted his teachings to the audience, not using metaphysical concepts to preach, nor answering to show off knowledge, but with compassion and wisdom, he focused on practical teachings to guide beings out of delusion and attachment, leading them to the right path. When teaching, the Buddha adapted to the circumstances, observing the audience's level, disposition, and capacity for understanding to guide them. Through the various ways the Buddha responded to questions, we see he used 4 forms of answers. 1. Worldly, Lokiya, standards based on human understanding of life in this world, though not absolute. 2. Individual, Pugala, speaking in accordance with human customs, thoughts, understanding, and culture to conform and explain the Dharma. 3. Therapeutic, Pratipaksha, addressing the specific circumstances of beings, speaking Dharma to provoke reflection. 4. Ultimate, Paramatha, absolute standards about ultimate truth, regardless of whether the listener understands or objects. In the face of metaphysical questions, the Buddha consistently maintained silence rather than engaging in elaborate arguments. With compassion and wisdom, he remained silent yet showed great concern for those in distress, offering help when the conditions were right. Many later Buddhist scholars attempted to explain the metaphysical issues that the Buddha had remained silent about, questioning whether he did have explanations for these mysteries. While we do not need to reach a definitive conclusion, we can assert that the Dharma the Buddha knew was far more extensive than what he taught. The scriptures recount a day when the Buddha held a handful of leaves and asked his disciples, "Monks, are the leaves in my hand more numerous, or are the leaves in the forest more numerous?" The monks replied, "Venerable sir, the leaves in your hand are very few compared to the leaves in the forest." The Buddha said, "Likewise, the Dharma that the Tathagata has realized is like the leaves in the forest, while the Dharma that the Tathagata has taught you is like the leaves in this handful, very limited." But why did the Tathagata not teach all of it? Because it is not beneficial, does not lead to nirvana. That is why the Tathagata did not teach all of those dharmas. Thus, the Buddha's silence on certain issues was not due to ignorance, but because he recognized the limitations of language and the inability to use ordinary language to express a transcendent realm. The Great Wisdom Treatise in Abhidharmakosha mentioned 14 cases, also known as the 14 unanswerable questions, similar to the metaphysical issues discussed above, which the Buddha did not answer. The reasons are: 1. These issues are all illusory and untrue. 2. Phenomena are neither permanent nor annihilated. These questions only lead to endless debate, useless arguments, and are unhelpful for spiritual progress. Therefore, the Buddha did not answer them. In summary, the Buddha always remained silent regarding metaphysical or mystical issues and consistently emphasized practicality. In Buddhism, it is not that metaphysical questions cannot be studied, but overemphasis on such matters leads to more afflictions and a lack of resolution due to their complexity. Therefore, in studying the Dharma or explaining Buddhism to others, we should follow the Buddha's example by combining practical elements and the needs of modern society to make the teachings more understandable and applicable to daily life, avoiding debates on metaphysical issues that show off knowledge without yielding any productive results. Otherwise, we waste time arguing day after day. Thank you for listening. If you found this video helpful, please share it with those who might benefit from it. Don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button, follow, and turn on the notification bell. This is how you can show your support for me. Once again, thank you very much, and see you in the next videos.
The tragic end for the one who wanted to assassinate the Buddha. Welcome back, everyone, to Mind Podcast. There is information suggesting that the Buddha was assassinated by one of his closest disciples. What is the truth behind this story? Let's explore it in today's video. During the Buddha's lifetime, with his superlative wisdom, dignified conduct, and boundless compassion, he transformed the lives of countless beings. Many who saw him even once or heard him preach at the monastery were inspired to renounce worldly life, embracing a monastic life of purity and detachment from family and worldly ties. From the time he started teaching to the moment he entered nirvana, the Buddha ordained many disciples. From the initial 5 companions, including Kondana, to the last disciple, Subhata, there were many who later attained enlightenment and became revered saints, such as Sariputta, Moggallana, Ananda, and Kassapa. However, among them was one disciple with a very peculiar nature, Devadatta. Despite being a follower, Devadatta spent much of his life opposing the Buddha, seeking ways to harm the teachings, and even attempting to kill him. Like Prince Siddhartha, Devadatta was born into the warrior caste, the aristocratic royal class of the time, and he was Siddhartha's cousin. After Siddhartha renounced his princely life, attained enlightenment, and became the Buddha, he returned to Kapilavastu to visit his father, King Suddhodana, and his relatives in the royal palace. During his time in the capital, he converted numerous nobles of the Shakya clan to monastic life, and Devadatta was among those who joined. However, unlike the other disciples who diligently practiced and eventually attained the level of Arhat, Devadatta pursued a different path. Devadatta's deceptive schemes and attempts to harm the Buddha. Devadatta was only focused on cultivating supernatural powers without achieving any real spiritual attainment. Gradually, his ego grew stronger, and he began to harbor the ambition of replacing the Buddha as the leader of the monastic community. He thought, "I have supernatural powers, and I'm related to the Buddha. In what way am I inferior to him? I have significant influence within the Sangha." Driven by these thoughts, he resolved to take over the Buddha's position. With this in mind, he attempted various malicious acts to harm the Buddha and the Sangha. Specifically, Devadatta tried 3 times to harm the Buddha. 1. First attempt, releasing an intoxicated elephant. Devadatta conspired with King Ajatashatru to release a furious elephant to attack the Buddha. One day, when the Buddha and his disciples went on alms rounds to the city of Rajgir, Devadatta had a fierce elephant intoxicated with alcohol and released it. As the Buddha and the monks were walking into the city, the elephant charged toward them, trumpeting furiously. Devadatta and King Ajatashatru were confident that this time the Buddha and his disciples would be trampled to death by the rampaging elephant. However, something miraculous happened. When the elephant neared the Buddha, it sensed his compassionate presence and knelt at his feet in submission. The plan of Devadatta and King Ajatashatru failed. 2. Second attempt. Rolling a boulder to harm the Buddha. Unrelenting after the first failure, Devadatta devised another plan to harm the Buddha. One day, while the Buddha was on his way down from Vulture Peak after collecting alms, Devadatta climbed to the top of the mountain and prepared to push a large boulder down to crush the Buddha. He carefully timed his actions, waiting for the Buddha to pass a particular spot. However, the earth deities intervened, causing a protrusion in the mountain to deflect the boulder. A small fragment of the stone flew off and struck the Buddha's foot, causing it to bleed. Number 3. Third attempt. Creating division in the Sangha with 5 propositions to challenge the Buddha. After these failed attempts, Devadatta continued his harmful actions by proposing 5 difficult rules to create a division within the Sangha in opposition to the Buddha's teachings. After many failed attempts to harm the Buddha, Devadatta decided to gain control and create divisions within the Sangha, monastic community. He noticed the Buddha's disciplinary rules for monks and lay practitioners, Lay followers were to observe 5 precepts, monks were to observe 10, and fully ordained monks, bhikkhus, were to observe 250 rules. These rules were designed to help the Sangha achieve inner peace and focus on mindfulness. However, Devadatta, in his ambition to surpass the Buddha, created 5 additional stricter rules, intending to present himself as a more virtuous leader. These rules were as follows. 1. Monks must reside in the forest and not venture outside. 2. Monks must sleep under trees and not use any other form of shelter. 3. Monks must wear patched robes made from discarded cloth found in cremation grounds, hospitals, or other discarded places. 4. Monks must rely solely on alms collected during begging rounds and should not accept invitations to meals from lay followers. 5. Monks are prohibited from eating meat or fish and should only consume vegetarian food. Devadatta imposed these rules, claiming, "Now that I have stricter rules than the Buddha, I have achieved a higher level of spiritual practice than he has. Those of you who wish to follow a higher path should come with me." Approximately 500 monks were influenced and followed Devadatta to establish a separate monastic community. However, the Buddha sent his disciples Sariputta and Moggallana to guide these monks back, and gradually, they came to realize the teachings and returned to the Buddha's Sangha. Ultimately, Devadatta was left alone. In his final days, Devadatta fell gravely ill and was filled with remorse. Realizing his mistakes, he wished to seek forgiveness from the Buddha and requested that the monks help him return to apologize and seek refuge in the Buddha's compassion. However, when he got within a few hundred meters of the Buddha, the earth opened up and swallowed him, pulling him into the depths of the ground and sending him into hell with no hope of rescue. From another perspective, we can see that the ascetic practices proposed by Devadatta aligned closely with the prevailing views of the time, which is why many members of the Sangha supported it. This was a common practice in some religions in India during that period. Even today, the influence of ascetic practices is still evident. An example of this is a Hindu devotee who claimed to have raised his arm to the sky since 1973. Though his right arm is now little more than skin and bone and cannot move, it has become a symbol for devotees of Lord Shiva. Mr. Amar Bharati, who once had a stable job, a house, a wife, and 3 children, woke up one morning in 1970 and decided to renounce everything to dedicate his life to serving Lord Shiva. He dressed simply and began wandering the streets of India, carrying only a trident. 3 years later, Amar Bharati found himself still too attached to worldly pleasures, and thus decided to raise his right arm and keep it elevated, which he has done for the past 38 years. Some believe that Amar Bharati raised his arm in sorrow over the wars happening around the world, hoping to call for peace. According to Adi Central, Amar Bharati has inspired many other devotees, some of whom have raised their arms to the sky for 7 years, 13 years, and even 25 years, enduring considerable pain along the way. Hindu devotees have various ways of expressing their devotion, such as abstaining from bathing, practicing a vegetarian diet, or sleeping upright. Amar Bharati's approach is quite unique. However, from the Buddha's perspective, all forms of ascetic practice cannot bring about the liberation of all beings, nor can they help one cultivate the Bodhi mind to attain enlightenment and become a Buddha. All devotees pursuing ascetic practices emphasize that the core purpose of practice is the heart. The foundation of all spiritual practices lies in the heart. The path of asceticism shows no sign of bringing joy or support for enlightenment. There is a famous saying, "The monk's robe does not make a monk." A well-structured method or secret technique does not always create true practitioners. Only a pure heart can transform an ordinary person into a Buddha. The story of an emperor will help you understand this better. Emperor Liang Wu Di, whose real name was Xiao Yan and styled Shu Da, was a 25th generation descendant of the statesman Xiao He from the Han dynasty. He was the only emperor who enjoyed living as a monk, maintaining a vegetarian diet and avoiding worldly desires. In the year 527, the Zen patriarch Bodhidharma traveled by sea from India to the southern seas. Emperor Liang Wu Di, who greatly admired him, sent an envoy to invite Bodhidharma to the capital, Jinling, to teach the Dharma. When he met Bodhidharma, Emperor Liang Wu Di, feeling pleased, asked, "Since ascending the throne, I have built many temples, ordained numerous monks, printed sutras, and performed good deeds without rest. What merit have I gained from this?" Bodhidharma replied, "None." This answer was like cold water splashed on Emperor Wudi's face, prompting him to ask, "Why?" Bodhidharma replied, "Because these deeds are with leaks. While they seem to hold merit, they are not true merit." The emperor then asked, "What is true merit?" Bodhidharma answered, "It is the realization of the essence of wisdom, the formless true nature that is inherently pure and subtle. True merit cannot be sought through worldly methods." When asked, "What is the supreme noble truth?" Bodhidharma answered, "Absolutely no holiness." Surprised, the emperor asked, "Then who is speaking to me now?" Bodhidharma replied, "I don't know." Emperor Liang Wudi did not comprehend and showed dissatisfaction. Realizing that their affinity was not aligned, Bodhidharma took his leave and went north to the Shaolin Temple on Mount Song, where he meditated facing a wall to propagate his teachings. Bodhidharma taught that true merit is inherently complete within one's own nature. Merit does not increase by giving, nor decrease by withholding. Good deeds are essential actions not to be done for the sake of merit. Zen's guiding principle is to direct one's heart and become a Buddha, free from inner and outer distinctions, without self, without others, without saintliness or sin. When Bodhidharma said, "Absolutely no holiness," Emperor Liang Wudi could not grasp it and thus could not accept it. According to historical records, Emperor Liang Wudi built hundreds of temples, ordained countless monks, organized numerous charity events, offered alms, cast bells, sculpted statues, and printed sutras in uncountable numbers. He believed these actions would bring great merit. However, he was shocked when Bodhidharma answered his question with none. Why is that? Some people, misunderstanding the principles, explained that Emperor Liang Wudi did not personally carry out these tasks but only instructed others to do so, and thus had no merit. Later, someone brought this issue to the sixth patriarch Huineng, who explained it as follows. Indeed, there was no merit at all. Emperor Liang Wudi, not understanding the Truda, confused merit with blessings. Building hundreds of temples, ordaining numerous monks, organizing ceremonies, offering alms, casting bells, creating statues, and printing sutras are external acts that benefit others. These deeds are blessings, actions that bring blessings. Blessings have the power to reduce karma, eliminate retribution, bring safety from disasters, and bestow good fortune and happiness in life. They can remove obstacles on the path, but do not help us escape the cycle of birth and death. On the other hand, merit is the internal cultivation that benefits oneself through practicing as taught in the Buddha's sutras. Constantly reciting the Buddha's name, observing the precepts, practicing meditation, and developing prajna wisdom. Merit has the power to help us cross the sea of suffering, awaken from illusion, and reach the shore of enlightenment and liberation. Merit is pure and transcends the cycle of birth and death, helping individuals transform their minds from ordinary beings to bodhisattvas and Buddhas. When we do things like building temples, contributing to their construction, participating in the development of temples, or supporting the activities of temples and the Buddhist community, we help others have a foundation for cultivating the path, and give Buddhism an opportunity to expand more robustly, reaching more people with good affinities. Emperor Liang Wudi confused blessings with merit. Although these actions bring great benefits to many, providing ample blessings without personal cultivation, without training the mind, learning the sutras, observing the precepts, practicing meditation, or developing prajna wisdom, all these actions remain external deeds that benefit others, but they do not contribute to one's own enlightenment and liberation. Why is this so? Because the internal greed, anger, and ignorance not only fail to diminish but tend to increase. Ignorance and afflictions do not disappear at all. In fact, they grow denser due to the attachment to one's own accomplishments. One may think, I have done so many beneficial deeds that few others can match, leading to an inflated sense of pride and arrogance, looking down on others and exalting oneself. Contributions such as distributing sutras for others to read, while not reading them oneself, or offering support to the poor and needy without understanding the deeper meaning behind these actions, can foster a desire for substantial rewards in the heavenly realms. All of these actions generate blessings alone. For example, someone may give alms to the poor or donate money with the desire to win the lottery, succeed in business, or secure personal safety, prosperity, love, or peace. When greed becomes excessive in this way, how can there be merit? Such actions yield only limited blessings, corresponding to the amount given. Sowing a small cause yields a small result. It cannot be otherwise. We should diligently perform all good deeds and then forget about them, not clinging to them to boast of our contributions or seek blessings in return. If we let go of the desire for recognition, our pride will diminish and our ego will lighten. Then our actions benefit both others and ourselves, bringing blessings and merit. Thus, to cultivate true virtue, the first step is to maintain a pure mind. We can conclude that Devadatta symbolizes the inner demon within each of us, representing the greed, anger, and ignorance of all sentient beings. In the Jataka tales, many accounts mention the enmity between the Buddha and Devadatta. Whenever the Bodhisattva Siddhartha manifested in life to teach and transform others, Devadatta would follow him, seeking ways to harm him. When the Bodhisattva appeared as a noble king, Devadatta would appear as a hunter. When the Bodhisattva manifested as a wise and compassionate merchant, Devadatta would take on the role of a malicious and deceitful trader. From this, we can see that it was not only in this lifetime, but over countless past lives, that Devadatta persistently followed the Buddha to try and sabotage him. However, due to the Buddha's boundless compassion, even though Devadatta committed numerous misdeeds, he was ultimately forgiven by the Buddha and was prophesied to attain Buddhahood after repaying his karmic debts in hell and cultivating the path to enlightenment. Generally, in the Theravada scriptures, Devadatta is depicted as a malevolent person who committed numerous transgressions. Conversely, in the Mahayana scriptures, Devadatta is portrayed as a bodhisattva who practiced opposing practices, meaning he undertook actions that hindered the spiritual cultivation of others. By following and practicing these opposing practices, Devadatta enabled the Bodhisattva Siddhartha to cultivate patience and endurance. Through fully practicing these 35 virtues, the Bodhisattva was able to achieve enlightenment and become a Buddha. The Buddha never regarded Devadatta as an enemy. Instead, he saw him as his greatest spiritual benefactor. Without Devadatta, the Buddha might not have been able to so readily attain the fruit of enlightenment. The image of Devadatta symbolizes adversity, the difficulties in daily life, and on the path of learning and practicing Buddhism. People must know how to overcome adversity and challenges in order to grow. For practitioners, overcoming difficulties is essential to achieving liberation. We need to understand that human wisdom matures in silence, while character matures in the storm. An airplane takes off against the wind, or a ship in the harbor is safe, but ships are built to brave the sea and face powerful waves. These sayings encourage us to view adversity as an opportunity to rise above. Life's storms may knock us down, but after every fall, we must stand up and continue forward. If we shrink back or retreat in the face of difficulty, we will never achieve results on the path of spiritual cultivation. The image of Devadatta represents the hardships and trials, while the image of the Buddha represents one who has overcome these challenges. We must follow the Buddha's example to find peace, joy, and strength on the path to enlightenment. There will be people who bear malice and seek to harm us, people who insult and humiliate us, even people who physically harm us or wish for our demise. How should we respond to them? If someone strikes us and we strike back, does that solve anything? As the Buddha taught in the Dhammapada, hatred is never appeased by hatred in this world. Only by love is it appeased. This is an eternal law. Indeed, repaying hatred with hatred only piles resentment higher like a mountain. In contrast, using compassion to transform hatred causes resentment to dissolve naturally. A true practitioner of Buddhism must know how to nurture compassion. It is easy to show love to those who love us, but to cultivate compassion for those who dislike us is the real challenge. Yet, accomplishing the difficult task is what defines a genuine practitioner. Moreover, we should develop a sense of pity for those who harm us, for they may suffer painful retribution in the future. We should vow to use various means to help guide them, and as we gradually cultivate compassion, resentments will lessen. Over time, they may become good friends and virtuous companions. Devadatta himself is a vivid lesson for future generations. We must examine ourselves to avoid his path, neglecting internal transformation and instead seeking supernatural powers, craving fame, and wanting to lead the monastic community. He allowed pride, arrogance, jealousy, and anger to dominate him, causing him to make mistakes. Though he lived within the Dharma, he failed to taste its sweetness. Though he lived in liberation, he generated new attachments, resulting in painful consequences. We must take him as a cautionary example and strive not to repeat his mistakes. We should focus on cultivating and transforming our inner selves, learn to control our thoughts, and not let negative intentions arise. Only then can we find peace and liberation on the path of spiritual practice.